As promised, here are 21 amazing Midjourney tips. Let me know which of these you think are the most important, and I'll make sure a dedicated video becomes a priority. Tip number 1, use the term HO scale in your prompt for a toy figurine look. And a special thanks to Paul Lanou for this suggestion. You can come up with a cool image like Batman on a surfboard, maybe even a setting like a baseball field, or some sort of high-tech sci-fi baseball field. I like this one a lot, a railroad on an alien planet. Or maybe even a toy soldier battle in a bathroom. Tip number 2, Midjourney recently added the ability to combine style reference codes together. And you can even add weights. Let's take this style code for example. An octopus doctor, SREF 301349843. That looks cool, I like the black and white. But then let's also take this style code right here, a little more colorful. We can combine them together in a prompt and add different weights to each code. First, we can leave a space between both codes and each style will have equal importance. A little bit of the black and white and a little bit of the color. Or we can add 2 colons after one of the codes followed by a weight. In this case, we're saying the black and white code is worth twice as much as the color code. And these are the results. I think they're pretty cool. But we can also do the inverse. We can increase the weight of the other style. And we might end up with something like these. There are unlimited possibilities. Tip number 3. With regards to your own personal style in Midjourney, you can do what's called a void prompt to see what your style actually looks like. You can start your void prompt with a symbol. In this case, some quotation marks will work just fine. Then we want to make sure we include --P and S1000 to make sure our style is as strong as possible. And we could end up with a grid like these. Look how cool this is. This is my personal style to the extreme. This is what Midjourney thinks I have a preference for. And I think it's pretty accurate. I like these a lot. This is basically removing any subject bias from the prompt. We're just using symbols. We don't know what Midjourney is going to create with it. This is to ensure our style becomes the most important part. Tip number 4. Speaking of your personal style, I really think you should be trying Style Raw. The results might be more true to you. Here is that same void prompt with Style Raw. And I think the results are pretty different. Maybe it is just the luck of the draw, but I think Style Raw is a little more realistic, focuses on reality just a little bit more. And in my case, it has a slightly more faded look, a little more vintage, if you will. For just a quick comparison, here is another grid of my personal code without Style Raw. You can see it's slightly not as realistic. It's a little more painterly, even a little more colorful. Your style might change quite significantly between default and Style Raw. Make sure you try it out. Tip number 5, if you want to try somebody else's style, but you don't know their personal code, you can @ their name on Discord. If I were to go into a public creation room on Discord, I can type my prompt, use --P, and then @ a username to get their style code. Here I've chosen the greatest support manager in history, Ancient Chaos. I hope you don't mind me sharing your code here. And when you hit enter, the username you added will turn into their code. Maybe it's a little hard to see what his code did specifically, but this is the type of look his preference creates. For the simple prompt Neon Genesis Evangelion, here is what my personal style code creates. A little more faded, maybe slightly colorful, but still kind of disturbing. And here's what Ancient Chaos's code creates. A little darker, a little more rich in color. Tip number 6. This is an oddly specific in-painting trick. If you're in-painting and you're trying to correct something very small, but it says you didn't select a large enough area, select outside the image. This is the type of trick that is all throughout my Midjourney beginner course. There are like 46 lessons right now and 8 hours of content. I just added a lesson all about personalization. And you know what? For the next 15 people who sign up, I'll give you 15% off. Use the code FTP15 for me at the checkout. Tip number 7. Let's stick with in-painting for a second. You can actually use style reference to swap different styles into your generation. Why don't we take this grid here? This was generated in my personal style at S1000. We can click on the picture so it expands, and then go down to copy image address. That's what we need. We need to be able to paste the link to this picture. Now let's go to the image of our man in a straw hat with the duck. If we go into vary by region, we can select select the entire man. You don't have to make it too specific. I mean, you can if you wanted to. You could use the lasso tool and really get specific with the selection. But at the end of our prompt, we can type --sref, and then you can use Control V or Command V to paste the link to our picture in the prompt. Don't worry if the link is long like this, it'll still work. But I also recommend you consider changing something in the prompt to specify what we're looking for now, which is a cartoon man. And we might end up with a grid like these. I happen to like number 2 a lot. I think it's really cool to see a cartoon subject mixed with reality. You could even select the duck instead and come up with a generation like these. Again, I like number 2. I think that looks pretty cool. And one last tip, you could remember the parameter for style weight. --SW and then a number between 0 and 1000. At 1000, we're telling Midjourney we want a very high strength for that style reference. And these are the results we might get. I'm a big fan of number 1. Tip number 8. This one is a little more philosophical. I want you to think of your generation as a first draft, and then use the variation buttons to explore more polished versions of the image you liked. I know it's hard to believe, but Midjourney can create even more amazing images based on the one you chose. Like here, we have a Polaroid of a woman at EDC. 4 pretty distinct options, but instead of just choosing one of these and moving on, I want you to think of it as a first draft and search through the variations. So let's explore number 3. We'll click on U3 to upscale it, and then from here, I think you should explore both very subtle and very strong. There will be very small differences, but something might catch your eye. But strong variations has a strong chance to show you something you weren't expecting. I am actually a big fan of number 3 right here. Remember, use your starting grid as a stepping stone and then explore through variations. Tip number 9, you can prompt for caricatures, and this works great when combined with character reference. You could try something simple like a caricature of a woman, cref, and then a link to your character, and you might get some exaggerated features like here in number 1. You might want to try lowering the character weight to 0 --CW 0, and you might also want to try lowering the stylized value to something around --S40. I think number 1 looks kind of cool. Number 2 is not bad either. But I found that the best prompt for this is something like a hand-drawn black marker caricature of your character. You could try something like Chaos 5 for a little more variety, as well as the parameters of style raw, a low character weight of 0, and a low stylized value all the way down to 20. I think these look pretty awesome. Tip number 10, I have an upscale trick for you. You might know that version 6 only offers a subtle and a creative upscaler, but there used to be different options in previous versions, like a 2x and a 4x upscaler. Here is how you can access those in version 6. We are going to be using vary by region, aka in painting, and the first part of the trick is to change the prompt so that it says --V 5.2. Then the second part is to select an area outside the image. We don't want to change the picture at all. Now it will create your same picture, but in the 5.2 algorithm, and you'll have access to the other upscalers. Check out the difference in file size. Here is the default of 2.2 megabytes. The subtle upscaler equals 7.5. The creative upscaler is 8.5 megabytes, but if we do that trick, the 2x is equal to 6.4, and the 4x is 28.1. Tip number 11, here's a little trick for the website. You can hover over the prompt of an upscale to see the grid it came from. I think there are probably a few things on the website that aren't exactly clear. So we have this upscale of our man with the duck, but how do we see the original grid it came from? Hover over the upscale, like I said, and now we have access to the other pictures in the original grid. Simple as that. Tip number 12, another hidden feature on the website, you can use the little search button to find more pictures similar to the one you're looking at. Let me show you what I mean. Okay, we have our man with the duck, that's fine. In our options above, between saving and liking the image, we have this search button right here. When we click on that, we are now presented with every other Midjourney images that match a similar style. So we're gonna get pictures of a lake, an old man, a hand reaching out, and of course, ducks. Even straw hats. Do you see how cool this is and how powerful that can be? and how easy it is to explore all the different aesthetics Midjourney has to offer. I think that tip is really powerful. Oh, this poor guy just wants a job. Tip number 13. Why don't I go over my personal workflow for the office hour recaps? First, I'll go through the explore page and just look for images that I like. Let's take this one for example. This is from Marat646, and what I will do is use the prompt. I'll copy and paste it into Discord because I like using Discord more, but that's just a personal preference. The first thing I'm going to do is change the subject, and I'm going to enter a few new subjects using permutations. I'll start with something like a character, probably Batman, something like an object, maybe a sports car, and then more of a theme in general, like Star Wars. I'll search through the prompt for any other words I need to exclude, like the mention of an outline on the king's head. I'm then going to try this prompt in a few different stylized values. Definitely the default, but one stylized value lower and one higher. Something like 50, 100, and 250. I also usually add in a little bit of chaos for more variety. That'll run 9 prompts, and I'll try to pick out the images I think are worth sharing. Oh, some of these are cool for sure. Tip number 14. This is something that's important to remember. You can adjust the strength of both style reference and character reference. When it comes to style reference, we can use --SW and then a number between 0 and 1000. Here's a generation of Batman using the highest strength of 1000. The style weight might not make the biggest difference, but check out what you can do with character reference. The character weight is a parameter --CW and then a value between 0 and 100. Here we have the prompt Eliza dressed as Batman with a character weight of 100, and as you can see, it's just Eliza, no Batman to be found. At a character weight of 100, it's going to try to include everything it knows about Eliza, including her hair, accessories, and outfit. We can start lowering the character weight down to 50, and we get a little bit more moody pictures, still not quite Batman, but I think we're on the way there. Because look what happens at a character weight of 0. We're actually getting our character dressed as Batman. The prompt is much more important, and that's why you should consider lowering the character weight in your prompts. Tip number 15. This is an amazing color trick. Use the word ombre in your prompt. If we prompted for a bird with blue and gold covered wings, we might get something like this, where both blue and gold are present, but they're sort of layered, intertwined with each other. The overall design of the bird mixes the gold and blue. But check out what happens when we change the prompt to include the word ombre. A bird with ombre colored wings, blue and gold. Ombre is the idea of two colors blending into one another, and that's what we get here. We can see the blue at the top fading into the gold at the bottom. Ombre is absolutely amazing. This is one of my favorite tricks to use. Like here we have an ombre colored robot, green, orange, and purple. You can name multiple colors, and all of the colors will start blending into one another. Just beautiful results. Like look at this blue and gold prom dress. Very stylish, but very on the nose, blue mixed with gold in different areas. Whereas an ombre colored blue and gold dress, we have the blue and gold fading in and out of one another. If you didn't know how to ask for this specific look, now you do. Use the word ombre. And if you like tips like this, you can sign up for my newsletter and I'll email you when the color course is ready. Tip number 16, you can actually pull off a mini photo shoot using subtle variations. Take a look at this prompt, a Polaroid of an Instagram model, Adventure Core, Chaos 9, Stylize 0. Not a bad picture, it's kind of cool, whatever. We're going to hit very subtle and then check out what we get. A grid that looks like this. You'll get more Polaroids of the same basic person in slightly different poses, and it looks a little bit like a mini photo shoot. You can even hit reroll for another set of pictures. Tip number 17, this is another photo shoot trick, and it comes from combining style reference random along with character reference. We could start our prompt with something like a portrait of, then we want to put the character reference parameter --cref followed by a link to our character. In this case, I have Eliza saved as a shortcut. Then we want to make sure our character weight is set to 0, followed by --sref and then the word random. This is going to generate a random style for us. But we're not done. I think you should use the repeat parameter, --repeat, and then a small number, maybe something like 4 or 5. And then we'll get to see a photo shoot of our character across a bunch of different looks. Tip number 18, special thanks to Samantha Brock for pointing this out. You can negative prompt Symmetry for more interesting compositions. All you need to do is use --no followed by the word symmetry for something like this. Isn't that beautiful? Same idea here. Our character is going to be a little off of center. filter. Tip number 19. Okay, this one is pretty intense, but stick with me here. Remix is very different than the standard variation, and this is easiest to see with style reference. Let's take this example, a portrait of a woman on this style reference code. If we were to hit very subtle and very strong, we might end up with something like these. Here is the subtle variation and the strong. Pretty much what you'd expect, right? Basically the same picture, just slightly different. A variation, if you will. But if we were to go into our settings using /settings and make sure remix mode is turned on, we can go back and click on variations, but this time a prompt box will appear. If you don't make any changes, it will run it as if it was a standard variation. Okay, that's fine. But if we were to delete something from the prompt, like the style reference code, the results are going to be quite different. Here is the subtle remix, and here is the strong remix. But let me show you the same idea again with another example. I want you to take a look at this void prompt right here from my personal style code. The key part is that it has a chaos 40 in the prompt. If we were to take that image and run strong variations, we would get something like this. Very, very similar looking pictures. But if we were to go into very strong and simply delete the chaos value, take a look at what we get. Isn't that mind-blowing? Oh, I'm getting goosebumps just looking at it right now. 4 more images, very different than the last, but all in the same sort of style. Now, I don't know if that's what you were expecting, but this is my new favorite thing to do. It is a way to get a consistent style across a grid of images. And all you had to do was delete something small from the prompt, like a chaos value. If you were to re-roll this entire grid, you'll get more of the same. Look at this grid, look how beautiful they are. Another 4 images all in that same general direction. You could have a lot of fun with this technique. Tip number 20. I think you could try prompting for double exposure, but also mentioning what you want to see inside of the image. Like this prompt, double exposure, where one layer is a photograph of a sports car and the second layer is a clock. You can choose any subjects or settings that you want. Maybe a painting mixing a tidal wave with a godlike being. Or a tidal wave in a sports car style raw. Look how cool that picture is. Maybe you want to switch up the order and say the first layer is a sports car and the second layer is the tidal wave. Look how gorgeous that is. Oh, okay, I like that one a lot. And tip number 21. This one is pretty specific, but it might help you out in certain situations. If you're having problems generating a look, I want you to try prompting in a low Stylize value and then using the remix feature to raise it. Like I was having trouble generating Thanos as a pinup model. Maybe my prompt wasn't very good, but it took going down to Stylize 40 to get a look I wanted, like here in number 2. So I upscaled it, and then the trick and my suggestion is to use remix on very subtle. And then this is where we can raise that Stylize value back to something more beautiful. Maybe 500, maybe even 1000. So here's our original image, and when we remix it with a higher Stylize value, we could end up with something like these. And comparing it to the original, I think I like these remixes a lot better. Some of these don't always work, but I guess that's just part of the Midjourney slot machine experience. There's 21 Midjourney tips that I think are amazing, and if you missed my previous videos, you can check them out right here. I hope you're doing well, take care, and I'll see you next time. Peace.